Hey everybody, welcome back to the tavern. This might be the first regular recorded video that I record for the channel, so whoever watches it, thank you so much. More than likely, you are friends, family, people in my fantasy leagues, and I can't thank you enough for taking some time from what otherwise could be doing all kinds of infinite amounts of amazing stuff, but you're checking out this channel. Thank you so much. What we're doing today is I have been doing a lot of Dynasty startup mock drafts. And so what I want to do is a little bit of a series where I'm going to do one of these at least maybe every other day, every 3 days or so. And part of my process, I have always been a game theory type of guy. When I approach redraft, when I approach best ball, I go at it. I mean, I've always been, I started off playing trading card games of all the types. I really love chess. And I got into fantasy football and then best ball. And throughout the process, I feel like a big edge that I've had is taking the game theory aspect of preparation. This is especially big in chess. And trying to take that into mock drafts and how you use mock drafts to then sort of figure out your board and your process a little bit better so that when you get to your real drafts, you can already have prepped for some of the tough decisions, some of the this player versus that player, how you rank a tier, more so than just here's kind of how I have my tiers ranked. Kind of exploring, hey, when I take running back early, what does that do in the later rounds to me? And I know this is a little bit less relevant to Dynasty startups because at a very high skill level in a league that has reasonably fluid and a lot of activity when it comes to trading, you can definitely take a best player available high value draft that doesn't necessarily take into consideration roster construction. However, I think it's still valuable to consider where those pockets of value are. Just because you find yourself at one point of the draft finding value, that might mean later on, if you don't want to have to overpay at a position to fill out a roster effectively, that can be a thing. If you're too thin at running back to the point where you just can't realistically have a shot because your RB2 is actual nothing, you might have to overpay. You might not in every league. But what I'm saying is, for the sake of argument, this strategy is more effective in redraft than Dynasty. But I think in Dynasty startups, if you want to love your roster from week one after the startup, this exercise is valuable. So I'm going to go through my decision points in a recent mock that I did, take you through my process and a couple of the picks, and then I've actually done analysis post-mock to kind of talk through some of the harder decisions, where I was at, and what I think about it now. And let's study together as we go through this off-season and maybe get a little bit better and a little more prepared as we get into the season. So as you can see, I have the board here for a recent mock that we did. Thank you so much to all those that popped in. This was super cool. I didn't actually have a live stream ability yet. I didn't know you had to ask YouTube for permission to live stream, but we're learning since we're very, very new. And so we didn't have all the slots filled and we didn't live stream, but we had most of them filled. First decision point is round one. You're taking quarterback up until when? When do you not take quarterback? For me, it's pretty simple. Right now, I am taking a quarterback up until at least the 109. And honestly, even at the 109, I may seriously consider Herbert and Caleb Williams above CeeDee Lamb, Chase, and Jefferson. That may seem crazy, but here's my thought process, and I'll go over this really briefly. Just look at a guy like C.J. Stroud, Jalen Hurts, even Anthony Richardson. When you look at these prospect profiles, we know we're going to do well. And sure, Stroud was a little bit of an aberration, right? But Hurts is a decent passer, but he's a cheat code. Anthony Richardson's a decent pass. I took him at the 106, but I'm telling you, he usually goes 106, 107. He usually goes before Lamb, maybe after the first wide receiver. And he's barely proven. Quarterbacks at the high tier just tend to hold their value and can appreciate in ways that the top ranked position players can't. Let me ask you, could CeeDee Lamb have had a better season than he did last year? Could Justin Jefferson at his peak have a better season or be more valuable than what he was at 23 years old? He was still topping out at the 106 to 108 at best. What I'm saying is at quarterback, if they have their upper range is a little bit higher, right? So Herbert, if he gets the weapons that he needs and has a bounce back and gets up into the 500, 550 plus pass attempts, maybe uses his legs a little bit in a better overall offense. Is he going to leap Bijan? Yes. Is he going to leap Chase? Yes. Is he going to be like close to their picks? Absolutely. If Caleb Williams and all those weapons ends up being the next CJ Stroud, maybe even a little bit worse, is he going to leap these guys? Yes, he is. So for me, it's clear there's more forgiveness to still be worth more at the quarterback position. And also keep in mind, guys like Caleb, they're still 2-3 years younger than Chase, Lamb, Jefferson, right? And Herbert is going to last longer than all those guys in the NFL as a quarterback. So I'm going quarterback till I might talk myself into at least 110. Round 2 is when it gets interesting. Quarterback versus wide receiver. And I think the mid-rounds, I'm practicing the mid-rounds first. And so for me, it was really the choice between do I take a quarterback, either Trevor or Jordan Love. It was really only Jordan Love for me. Or do I take Garrett Wilson or Puka? But realistically, we're talking about, it doesn't matter about your particular rankings. For me, this is, do I take the quarterback or do I take the high-end wide receiver here? And so the big question I think is valuable to ask, which you need to figure out before you're on the clock, is which player do you think is valued more in the trade market? If you were to go buy Puka, if you were to go buy Jordan Love, who costs more? If you were to sell, who do you have to pay more for? And this was an interesting decision because I didn't think of that at the time, but later on, I have to be honest, I think Puka and Garrett Wilson probably cost more than Jordan Love. Interestingly enough, I think Caleb Williams, the 101 in Superflex, probably costs more than Puka and Garrett Wilson. So it's kind of an interesting exercise post-draft when you're on the clock. Think about who fetches more in trade value, because in a startup, if you want to be active really early on, it's kind of worthwhile saying, hey, who's actually worth more? Who are you projected to be more, but where's the actual value? So initially, after I made the pick, I thought I had maybe made a mistake. But here's my thought. It was kind of the thought at the time, and here's where I'm going forward. In my opinion, when it comes down to real live drafts, the scarcity at the quarterback and knowing what it feels like to be thin at quarterback, it doesn't feel good. And it feels like it's a tough uphill battle to get to that point. Even if you're just nail wide receiver, it feels like an uphill battle when you're behind at quarterback. So I lean taking the quarterback when it's close, because the idea is, let's just say I objectively think that Garrett Wilson and Puka, and even like Harrison if he fell, are the better pick and worth more. So I'm losing value. Do I think that if I take quarterback, do I think later on when it comes between quarterback versus position player, but I need to take a quarterback, do I think I can get the value that I maybe gave up in round 2 back later on because I don't need to take a quarterback and I can afford to wait and let the draft come to me? I think I at least get to make back the same value that I potentially gave up in round 2, if not more. So that's my theory, and initially, until further inspection, I'm leaning quarterback in round 2 of these middle picks. This is relative, depends how the draft falls, but where ADP is right now, I'm taking Love and I'm taking Caleb. I'm not taking Trevor or Kyler. They're just in a different tier for me. It's not as close. So knowing where your tier breaks are is obviously important here, right? But if Caleb and Jordan had went, that means Marv falls to me, or maybe Gibbs falls to me, or maybe Amon-Ra falls to me, And those are clear picks there, tier break-wise, over Kyler and Trevor. But from what I've experienced, you're going to get Jordan Love, Caleb Williams here, and I'm leaning quarterback. So that's my thought process. I regretted it, and as the draft unfolds, I think it was probably the right choice to take quarterback. Let's go into round 3. The real thing to consider here is I hate taking running back basically any pick before round 10 in Dynasty startups. And so looking at the board when Olave got picked, I didn't want to take a third quarterback. And I tend to value extreme youth at these high tier picks when you can, because if your season doesn't go the way it's supposed to, guys like Ayuk are awesome, but I don't want to waste Ayuk's 26, 27-year-old season on a lost season for me, and I'm basically getting him for the first time when he's 28 years old. Waddle at 27. So I tend to go extreme youth in the first couple of picks. Taking Kyren here, as much as I love him, still felt gross to take a running back this early. So I guess the thing to think about here, here's the real decision point. The decision point for me is you have to draft some running backs. It's going to happen. What I have been experimenting with in mock drafts is, does it make sense and is it value-oriented to take one super high-tier top 10 running back early? Because then you know you have a locked and loaded RB1. And that means all you have to do is solve RB2. You have to solve one other running back position. And so does that mean you have to take 2 or 3 less dart throw shots at RB in the late rounds and can replace those dart throws with better value picks, specifically at wide receiver? Or maybe drafting an extra quarterback or two, taking some riskier upside shots, and seeing how they pan out. I've done some drafts where I've basically punted RB till like round 8 or 9. And what it means is in like the rounds 15 through 20, maybe 13 through 20, I have to take probably 6 shots at running back. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's very best ball oriented. But this is just where my thoughts are. Here's where my thought was to pick at. And I'm curious. This is me learning with you. I think I'm pretty good at these sorts of things, but at the same time, it's not about where you're at. It's about how do we get better and how do we learn through our draft process. And I watch all the content. The whole point of this channel is to be a guy essentially having a drink at a bar with every other fantasy degenerate who watches all the content, who is pretty sharp. How can we get even sharper through what I know, which is game theory analytics? And the idea is, if I take a guy like Kyren here instead of a Waddle or Ayuk, knowing that I personally hate the middling running backs, I don't like either hyper young and hyper good, or I want to punt till way later on when they're still hyper young but unproven. So if I take Kyren at the 3-6, does that afford me? In this particular draft, you can see I didn't take Trey Benson until the 11th round. Now, that's not realistic. I think after landing spots happen, these guys are going to move up at least a full round. But let's say I have to take Benson in, say, the 10th or the 9th. Fine, it means until nearly the double-digit rounds, I don't have to touch running back. And so, I don't know. That's my thought. My thought is it felt gross to take Kyren, not because I don't love Kyren, because I hate taking a running back in the first 10 rounds. I'm not kidding. So, interesting. In your drafts, I'm curious to hear what you think. And we'll go into this in later drafts. I have been experimenting with taking Brees or Gibbs. We'll go into this in the later first-round Dynasty startups, where if you start with one of them, you can really punt the position, because I think Gibbs and Hall are going to be top 5 Dynasty running backs for probably the next 5 years. 3 to 4 minimum. They're 26. Once they hit 27, there's kind of a cliff, right? And so things change. But that's pretty sick. And so I've been experimenting with, if I take them there, how far can I punt and just solve RB in the trade market? And it's been working out pretty well. So anyways, Kyren in the 3rd. Moving on, I'm going to talk about rounds 4 through 7 here in kind of a bulk. What I'm finding is that I absolutely I mean, I could not be more in love with the wide receiver position here. For all of you auction startup junkies, and I know it's a small amount of you, but my God, the people that are, blessings to you, man. You guys are a fun crowd. I love the auction format. Can we bring that back? If you guys haven't tried out an auction format, oh, it's bliss. It's awesome. Ultimate control. The most engaging. Also, set aside 4+ hours. It's a long draft, but it's sick. It's my favorite thing in the world. Exaggeration, but it's one of my favorite fantasy football things in the world. I love the wide receivers here. I love them all. Maybe not Nico Collins, but I'm telling you, Pittman, London, Devonta Smith, DJ Moore, sure he's getting a little bit older, but Higgins, JSN, sorry, we're going over here. Rashee Rice. I know. My wife would tell you. I try not to draft bad boys, but I was also one of them at various points in my life. So still love Rice, love Dell, O'Dunes, Flowers, Metcalf, JSN, Higgins, Addison, Pickens, Reed, Christian Watson, one of my favorite buy lows. I'm still pretty high on Christian Watson. People were off on CMC because he was injury prone. How'd that work out the next year in redraft and best ball when he played 17 games and was a league winner? Anyone who bets on injury prone loses more often than they win. Don't bet on injury prone. I think he's going to be okay. And if he's not, fine. It's a bet I'm willing to lose. But you win it more often than not, and he should be valued higher. And then BTJ. So BTJ is the last of a tier for me, so I got really lucky in this mock. Probably won't happen. Probably have to X out the 7th and just have to get comfortable with a different range of player here in the 7th. But at least the 4th, 5th, and 6th, wide receivers are nasty here. They're just awesome. And also, Kincaid and Bowers in particular, I freaking love. If I can get either of them in the 5th, I'm going to smash them. And I'm kind of putting them still in that receiver category. I've got to get them in a one-off. This is a whole separate video I could do on where to take tight end in a startup. But I want a good one. The fact is, when you have a good high-value tight end, it's one of those, what happens if the rest of your draft also goes well and you have a great tight end? Your ceiling is much higher when you have a high-end tight end, in my opinion. And your ability to not have to buy a middling tight end for a second-round pick, because you'll never get one for a third, at least a decent one, and it will cost you a second, and it'll probably be an overpay, is going to feel bad. So, love Bowers, love Kincaid in the 5th if you can get them. I don't know where ADP is going to settle, but for right now, I love the receivers in this range, and if you can get a tight end in the 5th, fantastic. Whole point of this is, when you go wide receiver, the whole Kyron at 306, if I could take Olave or Neighbors there, I would. And I still love taking more wide receivers here. So that's kind of the solution currently to the middle rounds. Moving on, 7, 8, 9. I love Bryce Young, I love J.J. McCarthy, and I freaking love Will Levis, and I love Baker Mayfield. I love them all in this range. And if I can take them as my QB3, I think they will appreciate. I think their value is as low as it gets. I think it can go a lot higher. I love from a value-centric drafting standpoint. And so I'm definitely looking at them in those rounds. Even if I have 0 running backs at this point, if I don't have that Kyron pick, I still love the value-centric of drafting those guys there. So I got sniped at Bryce, and I got sniped at Levis in this draft by Mike over here. Thankfully, I was able to get McCarthy on the way back here, so it felt pretty good. But I think I would still take a 4th QB at one of these spots, knowing I can trade for profit later on. And BTJ was just the last of a tier here. He's going to move up, certainly. The 7th round is probably not going to be good for wide receiver. It was just good in this draft because BTJ happened there. But anyways, moving on. That's recap so far. Round 1, round 2, the question is, where do you stop taking quarterbacks in round 1? Round 2, at least in the mid picks, QB or wide receiver. I've gone over that. Round 3, we really just touched on specifically, probably Kyron and JT is really what it's all about. But for me, based on where ADP is, we're going to have to do this more. But I want to take a wide receiver in the 3rd round badly if I can. But it's really Olave or Neighbors are the guys I'm looking at, or if any of the big ones fall, I doubt they will. I mean, if ADP changes up, there's still, it's going to be somewhat one of those guys. It's going to be Kyren, Olave, Neighbors. It's going to be one of those three. If those guys move up, somebody has to fall. I don't want Tyreek. I don't want Laporta. You know, but if it gets down to Wilson or one of these other top-tier quarterbacks, I'm going to take them. 4 through 6, love the wide receivers. 7 through 9, I love taking a third quarterback in this range. I can only take one. So if I take the one, am I taking the fourth? I potentially will. I straight up will. Brian Thomas at 9-3. Would I take Will Levis or Brian Robinson? I mean, for me, this is not close. I'm taking Baker Mayfield. I'm taking Levis. So far above Brian Robinson and Aaron Jones and all these other players. It's really not close. Josh Downs underrated, by the way. So we'll solve those rounds a little bit later on. I think what I think is the rookies are going to start getting moved up into the 7th through 9th. I think Adonai, Ladd, Troy Franklin, these guys are going to get moved up a round or two, and that's where ADP is going to settle. So moving on a little bit, rounds 10 plus, and ADP is going to change so much. We're looking at game theory. How do the draft flow? How do ADPs work with real players, right? What I found is I love starting at least in the 10th. It becomes rookie fever, and there's so many good, great young players. There's a billion. Basically, every 2024 rookie wide receiver is going to get taken in this range. They're all going. And I would very much like Benson. I would very much like Brooks. And there's some other like upside shots that I love. Like, this is why I love this range of running backs so much more than in this range up here. There's a narrow range of running backs that I want to draft per their cost. And Brooks, Benson, Chase Brown, Ford, Zamir White, Corum, Chuba Hubbard, Braylon Allen, Singletary, I think a little undervalued. I actually like Keaton Mitchell. I like Wright. Khalil Herbert's, I think, a little underrated. You start getting into some more rookies. I would love to take 3 to 4 of them here and then just have like one RB in the first 10 rounds and then 3 to 4 of these upside picks later on. So that's just kind of where I'm at right now. If ADP changes drastically, that's a thing, but I think wide receiver heavy, 4 through 7, and if the rookies get bumped up, that's really 4 through 9, but also looking to take at least one quarterback in that range, and I love the earlier tight ends. That's kind of where I'm at currently, and then even if I have to reach a little bit, I like where the running backs are down here. A lot of this has to do with some game theory of where do the running backs in this range appreciate to. I don't think they fall any farther, but I do think they can appreciate for the most part. And I think the running backs in this range, they just don't get better. They only fall, and the running backs at the very, very top of the board kind of stay there for a couple of years. So it's a value-centric approach. And anyways, these were the hard decisions. I don't have to go into too many crazy individual picks, right? Adonai was just my favorite rookie. I thought Ferguson was a great value here. I took a lot of flack for Ferguson above Kittle, but 25 years old and a good offense, and he's a good tight end. And then rookie fever, right? There was a couple of running backs I could take here, but I thought there was a tier break. I was going to take one of them, and I thought about taking another one in the next round. Mims is just another high upside player. So again, rookie running back, young, not rookie, but you get the idea. Bunch of rookie wide receivers. At the end, I think this is going to be a big theme of like 16 through 20, there's going to be a big chunk of rookie wide receivers that I want to draft, and I think they can all appreciate. So, anywho, that was my analysis of this mock draft. Those were some of the decision points that came to me at each pick, what I liked in terms of tiers and ranges. Maybe what I didn't cover is why do I like this tier but not like this next tier? I do not like the drafting the aging wide receiver in Dynasty. I think it's league specific. In sharp leagues, I don't think you're able to get decent value for your Devontae Adams, for your DeAndre Hopkins. I just don't think there's a big market for them, and I don't think you get paid very much. In non-sharp leagues, which I don't really want to cover, to be honest, but if you know you're in a little bit of a non-sharp league, I think there is definitely value in taking some of those guys, the Cooper Cups, because I think you can draft to sell mid-season when their production hits. I'm not saying these people can't be league winners for you. I'm saying there's more of a chance that out of these 12 people, you are not the one that is looking like you're going to have a big run in year one. And the way I draft is usually I'm drafting assets that I need to appreciate to finally hit their production peaks. And so year one is not usually my year. And so I'm not usually into these aging wide receivers. And that's why I see in this round the Ridleys, the Godwins, Keenan Allen, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper. Love Deontay Johnson, though. I just, that huge rank Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, I don't like drafting any of them because I tend to be a value-based drafting person. And I think just like buying a new car, it depreciates the second the season starts. And as you get into the second half, just before the playoffs, their value dramatically tanks as people are more excited for the rookies and the draft picks, and your aging veterans lose a lot of value. You can only sell them to playoff contenders if they have good production, assuming they have no other options. A lot of times they do. So anyways, that I just want to explain real quickly why I love the wide receivers where I do, and why this next tier, why I like what I like, because I don't like that tier. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. Please drop a comment. Again, this is probably the first or second YouTube video I've ever uploaded. I don't really know what I'm doing yet. I don't claim to be a full expert. I claim to be a person who has been very successful at a number of strategy games, including fantasy football in every format. But what I think I bring to the table is I watch all the content. I've been a diehard Fantasy Footballers fan. I love Mason over FLock Fantasy. Love the PFF guys. Love the ETR guys. Love Fantasy Pros. I watch all the stuff, but I take what I think is the best game theory optimal sort of takes from all of them, and I boil it down into what's my thing. I think I draft extremely well because I think drafting is its own version of kind of a card game. Kind of like drafting in like a Magic the Gathering for the nerds out there. How we doing? And I want to do these videos in a way where we can analyze, based on your own takes, how can we optimize your own takes from a draft optimal standpoint. Anyways, hope you liked, and I will catch you on the next one. Thanks.